The fundamental weakness of any military force spread across a long front line is that it cannot be strong everywhere at once. Reserves exist to solve this problem. Mobile forces held behind the front, ready to rush to any sector that comes under threat and reinforce the defense before it breaks. But reserves only work if the threat comes from one direction at a time. If the threat comes from two directions, the reserves must split. If the threat comes from three directions simultaneously, across sectors separated by dozens of kilometers, the reserves face an impossible choice. They cannot be in three places at once. They must choose. And wherever they do not go, the enemy wins. Just days ago, on the Eastern Front in Ukraine, Ukrainian forces exploited this fundamental truth with devastating precision. In a coordinated operation planned over weeks and executed across three separate sectors in a single night, Ukrainian assault teams, drone operators, artillerymen and HIMARS crews launched simultaneous attacks that overwhelmed the Russian division's ability to respond, triggering a cascade of destruction that left over 350 Russian soldiers dead or wounded, 2 battalion headquarters destroyed, 11 armored vehicles burning, and the Russian command structure in the sector paralyzed by the impossibility of responding to 3 crises at once. This is the story of the triple strike. And the night that proved a well-coordinated Ukrainian operation can defeat a numerically superior Russian force by attacking everywhere the enemy is not ready. The operation required something that distinguishes the Ukrainian military from most armies in the world: the ability to coordinate complex operations across multiple brigades, multiple weapon systems, and multiple sectors simultaneously, with split-second timing and real-time intelligence sharing. This is not a capability that can be improvised. It is the product of years of institutional development, Western training partnerships, battlefield experience, and a command culture that empowers junior leaders to make decisions and execute plans with initiative and speed. The planning began 3 weeks before execution. Ukrainian intelligence identified 3 targets, 1 in each sector, that could be struck simultaneously with available forces. Each target was selected not only for its military value, but for its relationship to the Russian reserve system. The 3 targets were positioned so that the Russian Divisional Reserve, a battalion-sized force held approximately 20 kilometers behind the front, could not reach any of them in time to affect the outcome if all 3 were hit at once. The timing was synchronized to the minute. All 3 operations would commence within a 10-minute window, close enough that the Russian command would receive reports of all 3 attacks almost simultaneously, but with slight staggering to account for the different approach, times and distances involved. The weather cooperated. The night was overcast, low cloud that grounded most Russian fixed-wing reconnaissance, with temperatures around 0 degrees Celsius and a thin fog that reduced ground-level visibility without impeding Ukrainian night vision equipment. The early spring dampness muffled sound, helping Ukrainian assault teams approach their targets undetected. The ground was soft from the seasonal thaw, but firm enough along roads and established paths to support infantry movement. At 0100 hours, the triple strike began. The northern operation was a ground assault, the most complex and personnel-intensive of the 3. A reinforced Ukrainian assault company, approximately 120 soldiers from an elite infantry brigade, attacked a Russian fortified strongpoint that had been a thorn in Ukrainian operations for weeks. The strongpoint was built around a cluster of buildings on elevated ground, surrounded by trenches, bunkers, and a minefield. It was held by an estimated 130 Russian soldiers from a motorized rifle company reinforced with additional machine guns and mortar support. The Ukrainian assault was preceded by a 4-minute artillery preparation, short, violent, and precisely targeted on the bunker positions and machine gun nests that the assault teams would face. Ukrainian combat engineers had cleared lanes through the minefield over the preceding 2 nights, and the assault company moved through the gaps at speed immediately after the artillery lifted. The assault came from 3 directions, north, west, and southwest, simultaneously. Each platoon-sized element hit the Russian perimeter at the same moment, preventing the defenders from concentrating their fire on a single approach. The outer trench line fell within 10 minutes. The Ukrainian assault teams poured into the strongpoint and began the brutal work of close-quarters clearing, bunker by bunker, building by building, room by room. The fighting was intense, but one-sided in its outcome. The Ukrainian soldiers had rehearsed this assault on a mock-up position for days. They knew the layout. They knew which bunkers had overhead cover strong enough to survive grenades and which did not. They knew the communication trenches and the dead-end passages and the positions where Russian defenders were most likely to try to make a stand. The Russian defenders, mostly mobilized troops with limited training, fought in some positions and surrendered in others. By 02:30, 90 minutes after the assault began, the strongpoint was in Ukrainian hands. Confirmed Russian losses: approximately 90 killed, 40 wounded, and 35 captured. Total Russian casualties: 165 out of approximately 130 defenders, plus reinforcements who had attempted to reach the position during the fighting. Ukrainian losses: 11 wounded, 2 killed. Stay with this. While the northern assault was tearing through the Russian strongpoint, the second operation, 35 kilometers to the southeast, was already in progress. The southeastern operation was an armor ambush. Ukrainian intelligence had identified a Russian armored column, 15 vehicles including tanks, BMPs, and support trucks, that moved regularly along a specific route between a logistics hub and forward positions. The column traveled at night to avoid Ukrainian drone surveillance during daylight hours, using the same road at approximately the same time on a predictable schedule. Ukrainian analysts had tracked this pattern for over a week and had pre-positioned an ambush force along the route. The ambush site was chosen with precision. The road passed through a shallow valley where low hills on both sides provided concealed positions for Ukrainian anti-tank teams and FPV drone operators. The early spring ground on either side of the road was soft and waterlogged, impassable for heavy vehicles. Any column entering the valley was committed to the road with no option for off-road escape. The Russian column entered the ambush zone at 01:05, 5 minutes after the northern assault began. 15 vehicles, 4 T-72B3 tanks, 6 BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles, 3 supply trucks and 2 fuel tankers, stretched along approximately 600 meters of road. The ambush was triggered by anti-tank guided missiles hitting the lead and rear vehicles simultaneously, the classic killbox initiation. The lead T-72B3 took a missile to the hull side and erupted in flames, blocking the road forward. The rear fuel tanker was hit by an FPV drone that ignited its cargo, creating a wall of fire that sealed the column's retreat. The 13 vehicles between the two kills were trapped, and Ukrainian fire poured into the valley from both sides. Anti-tank missiles, FPV drones diving from above, machine gun fire sweeping the road. The Russian crews and infantry fought back, turrets traversing toward the muzzle flashes on the hillsides, machine guns firing wildly into the darkness. But they were shooting at positions they could not see, while Ukrainian operators, using night vision and thermal optics, could see every vehicle and every soldier with perfect clarity. Which ambush technique is most devastating? A. Classic killbox, destroy lead and rear vehicles. B. Flanking fire from elevated positions. C. Combined arms with drones and missiles. D. All coordinated together. Tell us in the comments. The ambush lasted approximately 25 minutes. By 01:30, 11 of 15 Russian vehicles were destroyed or burning. The 4 that survived, 2 BMPs and 2 supply trucks in the middle of the column, had been abandoned by their crews who fled on foot into the darkness. Ukrainian forces did not pursue. The priority was destroying the equipment, not chasing scattered infantry through the fog. Russian personnel losses from the ambush: approximately 70 killed or seriously wounded out of an estimated 80 to 90 soldiers and crew accompanying the column. The survivors, perhaps 20 men, scattered across the wet fields and eventually straggled back to Russian lines over the following hours, arriving without vehicles, without weapons, and without the supplies that the column had been carrying to the front. Now look at the center. While the northern assault was clearing bunkers and the southeastern ambush was destroying armor, the third operation was being executed with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. The central operation was a HIMARS strike, or more precisely, 2 simultaneous HIMARS strikes on 2 Russian battalion headquarters located approximately 8 kilometers apart. Ukrainian intelligence had been tracking both headquarters for weeks, confirming their locations through drone surveillance, signals intercepts, and pattern analysis. The two headquarters controlled adjacent battalions, together responsible for a significant section of the Russian front line. Destroying both simultaneously would create a command vacuum across the entire sector. At 0110, timed to coincide with the peak of the northern assault and the southeastern ambush, two HIMARS batteries fired simultaneously. 4 rockets streaked toward the first headquarters, a cluster of buildings where a Russian lieutenant colonel commanded his battalion from a basement operations room. 4 more rockets targeted the second headquarters, a partially underground bunker complex approximately 8 kilometers away. The strikes were devastating. The first headquarters took direct hits that collapsed the building onto the basement operations room. Intercepted communications confirmed the lieutenant colonel killed, along with his operations officer, intelligence officer, and at least 5 other staff members. The battalion's primary communications hub was destroyed. The second headquarters suffered similar destruction. 2 rockets penetrated the bunker complex, killing the commanding major and an estimated 8 to 10 officers and staff. Communications equipment at both locations was eliminated. In the space of 30 seconds, 2 Russian battalions, perhaps 800 to 1,000 soldiers across dozens of positions, lost their commanding officers, their operations staffs, their intelligence sections, and their primary means of communication. The soldiers at the front had no orders, no fire support coordination, no logistical direction, and no way to reach anyone who could provide it. How many Russian battalion commanders do you think Ukraine has killed since the full-scale invasion began? A. 50, 100, B. 100, 200, C. Over 200. The actual number would shock you. Drop your answer below. Now watch what happened to the Russian reserves. The Russian Divisional Reserve, a reinforced company of approximately 150 soldiers with armored vehicles, was stationed approximately 20 kilometers behind the front. When the first reports of the triple strike reached the divisional headquarters, the reserve commander faced exactly the dilemma the Ukrainian planners had intended. 3 simultaneous crises, 3 sectors requiring reinforcement, and 1 reserve force that could only go to 1 location. The divisional commander, according to intercepted communications, initially ordered the reserve north, toward the strongpoint assault, which was the most visible and dramatic of the 3 attacks. The reserve column, 8 vehicles, including BMPs and trucks, departed its staging area at approximately 0140 and began moving north along a road that Ukrainian intelligence had predicted they would use. Ukrainian FPV drone teams were waiting. The reserve column was hit twice during its 30-minute movement. First by a pair of FPV drones that destroyed the lead BMP, and then by a second drone strike that disabled a truck carrying infantry. The column halted, regrouped, and continued. But the attacks had slowed its movement, caused casualties, and forced the commander to proceed with increased caution, reducing his speed from 30 kilometers per hour to less than 15. At approximately 0215, the divisional commander changed his mind. New reports from the southeastern sector, describing the destruction of the armor column, convinced him that the ambush was the greater threat. He ordered the reserve to divert southeast. The column reversed direction, losing additional time. During the course change, another FPV drone struck a trailing vehicle, destroying it and further reducing the reserve's strength. By the time the reserve column reached the southeastern sector at approximately 0300, nearly 2 hours after the ambush had begun, the engagement was long over. The burning vehicles were cooling. The surviving Russian soldiers had scattered. There was nothing to reinforce. Meanwhile, in the north, the Ukrainian assault force had completed the capture of the strongpoint, with no Russian reserves arriving to contest it. And in the center, the 2 destroyed headquarters had left their battalions leaderless and uncoordinated, with no reserve force available to restore command and control. The triple strike had worked exactly as designed. 3 simultaneous operations, 3 sectors overwhelmed, 1 reserve force rendered useless by the impossibility of choosing correctly and the harassment of Ukrainian drones during movement. Is Russia's command structure capable of responding to simultaneous threats across multiple sectors? Or has Ukraine proven it is fundamentally broken? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Now the economics of a night of coordinated destruction. Northern assault, Russian strongpoint captured, 90 killed, 40 wounded, 35 captured, personnel losses approximately $4 to $7 million. Fortified position lost with all equipment, weapons, ammunition, and construction investment, estimated $5 to $8 million. Total northern sector losses, $9 to $15 million. Southeastern ambush, 11 armored vehicles destroyed, 4 tanks at $1 to $1.5 million each, 6 BMPs at $500 to $800,000 each, plus 1 fuel tanker. Total vehicle losses $7 to $12 million. Cargo destroyed, supplies and ammunition estimated $2 to $3 million. Personnel losses 70 killed or wounded, $2 to $4 million. Total southeastern sector losses $11 to $19 million. Central HIMARS strikes, 2 battalion headquarters destroyed. Equipment, communications, vehicles at each location estimated $4 to $7 million combined. 20+ officers and staff killed. Training, experience, and replacement cost estimated $5 to $8 million. Command vacuum across 2 battalions for days. Operational disruption cost estimated at $5 to $10 million. Total central sector losses $14 to $25 million. Reserve force losses during movement, 3 vehicles destroyed by FPV drones. Personnel casualties estimated $1 to $2 million. Fuel and operational costs of the fruitless reserve deployment, approximately $200 to $500,000. Total estimated Russian losses across all 3 sectors: northern $9 to $15 million, southeastern $11 to $19 million, central $14 to $25 million, reserve harassment $1 to $2.5 million, grand total $35 to $61.5 million. Add the cascading operational costs, the days of disrupted command, the unfilled frontline positions, the cancelled operations, the morale impact across the division, and the conservative estimate rises to $50 to $95 million in total damage from a single night. Ukrainian expenditure across all 3 operations: assault force ammunition and casualties, ambush team munitions and drones, HIMARS rockets, artillery and FPV drones used in all sectors including reserve harassment, estimated $5 to $8 million. $8 million to inflict $95 million in damage. A cost-exchange ratio of approximately 12 to 1. If facts like these demonstrate that coordinated Ukrainian operations can systematically dismantle Russian forces faster than Russia can rebuild them, type truth in the comments. Which of the 3 operations was most impactful? The assault, the ambush, or the headquarters strikes? Tell us below. The Ukrainian officers who planned this operation understood a principle that Russian command has repeatedly failed to grasp. In modern warfare, coordination is more powerful than concentration. Russia concentrates, massing soldiers and equipment at single points of attack, throwing weight against strength. Ukraine coordinates, striking multiple points simultaneously with precision, exploiting the enemy's inability to be strong everywhere at once. The triple strike demonstrated this principle with brutal clarity. The Russian division had enough soldiers to defend against any one of the 3 attacks. It had enough reserves to reinforce any single threatened sector. But it did not have the command agility, the communication speed, or the decision-making flexibility to respond to all 3 at once. And Ukrainian planners knew this, because they had studied the Russian division's response patterns, timed its reserve deployment speeds, and calculated exactly how many simultaneous crises would overwhelm its capacity to react. This is not brute force. This is intelligence applied as a weapon. And it is why Ukraine, outnumbered, outgunned on paper, continues to inflict losses on Russia that defy the conventional mathematics of war. 3 questions before you go. First, if 3 coordinated Ukrainian operations can overwhelm an entire Russian division's ability to respond in a single night, what happens when Ukraine scales this approach to 5 simultaneous operations, or 10, across the entire front? Second, the Russian reserve force was harassed by FPV drones during its movement, delayed, redirected, and ultimately arrived too late to affect any of the 3 engagements. If Ukrainian drones can neutralize Russian reserves during transit, does Russia effectively have no operational reserve capability? And what does that mean for the stability of its front line? Third, the total cost of the triple strike to Ukraine was approximately $8 million. The damage to Russia was up to $95 million. If Ukraine can sustain this rate of exchange night after night, week after week, how many nights remain before the Russian division in this sector is no longer capable of holding its positions. Think about that. Subscribe to Steel Command, share this video. On one night, Ukrainian forces proved that they can be everywhere at once, and that Russia cannot. 3 strikes, 3 sectors, 350 casualties, 2 destroyed headquarters, 11 burning vehicles, and a Russian command that learned too late that the enemy they face does not just fight harder, it thinks faster.